Welcome to Click to Learn More, a show that sounds like clickbait.
But it's actually two dorks.
I'm Lidi.
I'm Dorm.
And today, Dorm.
Yes.
Because it is spoopy October times.
It is.
We're going to talk about blood.
Yay.
We're going to talk about Blood Splatter Analysis, which I think we touched on in the Luminol episode. We kind of briefly mentioned it. I almost said my corpses for today.
Well,
I meant my
Freudian slip.
Oh my God. I meant my sources for today, and I said my corpses.
You did say corpses.
Our encyclopedia.com, forensicsciencesimplified.org, thanks to them.
Trusty org.
Forensicscolleges.com, crimesceneforensics.com, howstuffworks.com, Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and Division of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, and Wikipedia. Nice. As is usual. So if you've ever seen one of those like crime drama TV shows, I'm talking like CSI Wherever or
NCIS Wherever.
Yeah. So all of those, Dexter, even some of the dramatic reenactments that happen on like Forensic Files or cold case shows, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You often see crime scene investigators that are like moving around in like gloves and those suits that take up their whole bodies, and they're like taking pictures and stuff like that, you know? Sometimes you're also going to see like red strings from one area to another.
Like Pepe Sylvia.
Yeah, exactly. It's all connected. So those will normally meet at a singular point. Those represent the trajectory of blood. And the trajectory of blood spatter to help recreate the crime, and it kind of helps sort out the scene ahead of them. So like it kind of gives you an idea. Basically, I'm going to sum it all up really quickly. Basically what Blood Splatter Analysis does is it tells you if the person who was injured or who was in this altercation or who is dead now had been sitting, standing, or lying down at the time of the attack. Like it gives you a better understanding of like where the assailant was, where the victim was. But we're going to go a little more in depth in that. But that's the basic idea of it.
Gotcha.
So the study of blood in a crime scene, like where it lands, the physical and visual arrangement of how it landed against the surface, the consistency of the blood, the size and shape of the spatter or droplets, it's all included in Blood Splatter Analysis, which is also referred to as Blood Stain Pattern Analysis, or BPA.
Nice.
The usefulness of individual bloodstains and bloodstain patterns lies in the retention of information descriptive of the possible events that could have produced them. So all that means is, how did this happen? Can this help us solve a crime?
Gotcha.
Bloodstain pattern analysis evaluations are conducted to determine what action or actions or sequence of actions could have created the bloodstains and or patterns observed. So information that may be gained with bloodstain pattern analysis include, for example, the position of the individual when the blood was deposited. Were they sitting? Were they standing? Were they lying down? The relative position of individuals at the time of bloodshed, the possible type of weapon used, as well as possible mechanisms that could have produced the blood staining on a surface. So you don't really think about it as much if you look at a crime scene to think that, like, there was a ton of blood. There's blood everywhere. But a crime scene and, like, a blood spatter analysis or analyst will go in and be like, nobody move. We got to get pictures of all the blood. We got to get pictures of this. We need to know, is the blood still wet? How long has it been here? Like, we have to take samples. We have to do all this stuff. If the blood's still wet, they can take a sample with like a syringe. If not, they normally get samples with like Q-tips, and they'll take it back with them.
So it's not like the scene in Gone Girl where she goes around and puts a Post-it note near every blood spatter. And it's like, that's where blood is.
Right. Not so much. They will note it with, normally there's like a ruler, like you'll have like an L-shaped ruler that they'll frame it with that. And then they'll take pictures from every possible angle, and like the whole room and like its relation to where it is in the room. Because that'll end up helping in the long run, or the intent is that it will end up helping in the long run. So this is straight from Wikipedia. So in forensic science, blood residue can help investigators identify weapons, reconstruct a criminal action, and link suspects to the crime. Blood constitutes about 8% of a person's weight, normally about 5 liters, and it circulates near the surface of the skin. Almost all trauma, and trauma is just going to be considered an injury or some kind of damage to the body, therefore results in the shedding of blood. So when a person loses more than 1 liter of blood, they're likely to become unconscious. I didn't know that. I didn't know. So you have about 5 liters, normally about 5. It said like 4 to 6 in women and anywhere from like a little bit over for men.
Yeah, I got more blood than you.
Yeah, you got more blood. Well, I lose mine every month.
It's true. I keep mine all inside me.
Yeah, you keep yours inside you.
I store mine up.
you just keep like collecting more and more of it over
blood
time.
bank dorm, they call me.
Blood bag, ew, gross. But you have about 5 liters in your body, and if you lose more than 1 liter, you can become unconscious. But more than 1.5 and death quickly becomes a very possible risk. Residues from blood are very difficult to completely remove, which we kind of found out about in the episode that we did on luminol. It's kind of impossible to completely get rid of blood, and often if somebody has tried to clean the blood, you can see that.
Gotcha.
Like you can see that that's what's called a smear pattern, is if they're like spreading the blood around, you can see that they've tried to do that, which is also taken into consideration when doing blood pattern or blood spatter analysis. They'll be like, oh.
Quick point. 5 liters is 1.3 gallons.
1.3. See, that's really weird.
Not a lot of blood.
That isn't a lot of blood. You could head down to the store and pick me up a gallon of blood. You know?
Yeah, I guess.
You could. That's gross.
I mean, shipping-wise, sure. I don't know if they're going to sell it.
I don't know if they'll let it happen.
The quantities exist.
But you never know. Blood residue has even been recovered from 100,000-year-old stone tools. So like they've been able to go back and like say that this is blood, and they can determine if it's animal blood, human blood. They can determine like how long it's been there.
Plant blood,
yeah. Which now with the freaking like Impossible Burger,
yeah,
they put like the heme stuff in it, so it basically got the heme. Who got the heme? And it basically bleeds like
Who let the heme out?
Who let the heme out? Heme. And it will bleed, quote unquote, like a real burger will, which is kind of gross. But anyway.
I love it.
So the history behind blood pattern analysis, blood spatter analysis, blood whatever analysis, they call it 15 different things.
Yeah.
Blood pattern. The specialized technique of, quote, reading blood spatter isn't a new one. It's believed to have been studied to some degree for centuries, though the first surviving modern study of BPA occurred in 1895. So this info is going to be straight from forensiccolleges.com. So Edward Piotrowski from the University of Krakow published...
You think they all say it like that?
Published a paper entitled On the Formation, Form, Direction, and Spreading of Bloodstains Resulting from Blunt Trauma at the Head. This part's unsettling. Hey, by the way, I should tell you, we're talking about blood. It's unsettling. If you don't like blood, don't listen.
I can't opt out.
He can't get away. The rather gruesome study that he undertook involved covering one corner of the room with white sheets and studying the blood patterns that appeared as he beat rabbits to death.
Oh my God! I was expecting watermelons.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sad now.
No, I know. I was tried to defend. I tried to help you. But
Jesus, I didn't. Oh,
it's bad.
Poor rabs.
Poor little rabos. Poor little rabums. They lost their lives for science.
Did they eat them?
I don't know. It was 1895.
Probably.
Yeah,
okay.
They ate them.
Okay.
It went to. They were asleep. They were asleep when it happened. Wink.
Dreaming of carrots.
Yeah, dear listener, wink.
Yeah,
they were asleep.
For winking at me.
They were
in this purely audio medium. You could have just said wink, but you had to actually sell it with the wink.
I had to sell it to you.
Thank you.
The audience doesn't care. I have to sell it to you. Since the late 1950s, BPA experts have claimed to be able to use biology, physics, including fluid dynamics, and mathematical calculations, gross, to reconstruct with accuracy events at a crime scene, and it was accepted by the justice system. So
say the Justice League.
And the Justice League was like, yeah, let's have it. Justice League, the very first BPA Justice League member, Blood Boy, as they knew him, was
sorry.
You know, his outlook on life was positive.
Stop! It was accepted by the Justice League.
He got put into the Justice League pretty early on, I'd say.
Sorry. I completely ruined that part. Oh my God.
Was it the very honest look I gave you at the end?
I don't know.
Because I gave you a very honest look.
This thing, and the Justice, and my mind just went
Justice League. Could you imagine? Listen though, for real, if he was in the Justice League, all the crime that happens, all the violence that happens, they would need him. They could use him. Absolutely, you could use a BPA. You kidding me?
So sorry.
No, you're fine.
I might cut all that.
No, it was good. You should keep it. So as stated before, this technique of forensic science has drawn more skeptical scrutiny since 2000, since at least part of the work when it comes to BPA has to be performed intuitively. So not a lot of people take this very seriously. Because a lot of it is intuition of assuming somebody was standing in a place where they were.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How many of the topics you've done have there been science, but not everybody believes it science?
I feel like that's always going to be something.
Yeah, that's true.
In science, there's always going to be somebody that goes, I don't agree with this. I mean,
even like Newton, right?
Especially like
gravity's law.
and with everybody saying the theory of relativity,
right?
Like saying, you know,
I guess that's true. It's kind of skepticism.
Yeah. People are always going to say, okay, we'll prove it. And that's what the justice system's there to do. Yeah,
not the Justice League.
That's what the Justice League is there to do. They're there to prove prove a crime. But yeah, it's pretty.
It's not a pseudoscience.
Yeah. Like,
maybe it is.
It's tough. So the BPA is criticized due to the myriad ways that blood can affect a crime scene. So many reputable analysts disagree on findings, which ultimately can call into question the validity and value of their conclusions, no matter how trained they are. So, like, you put two so-called BPA specialists on the stand.
Yeah.
One says he was killed with a pool cue. The other one says he was killed with a pipe. Like, that's going to matter. Right?
And one of them's going to win Clue.
Exactly. And then where was he found? In the observatory. That's going to matter because, like, if this guy was found later and he had a pole cue in his car, you're like, okay, well, if that's what killed, if that's what killed the victim,
find Mario,
then that's who it was. Exactly. If they find Yoshi nearby, then we know we got him. So, for instance, in a crime scene that involved multiple victims and or multiple assailants, it becomes increasingly difficult to parse out the information provided by blood spatter analysis. So, if you got a ton of people in a room and they're all fighting and somebody ends up dead, it's like, okay, well, who started it? Nobody's going to come up and say, I started it. So now you have to blood spatter analysis go, work backwards. But yeah, not a lot of people take blood spatter analysis really seriously anymore, which I kind of get in a way because it is, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's kind of along the same lines of like forensic dentistry. Like it's, if you're specialized in that area, you can see it. But like if you or I walk up, we're like, oh, I guess I see it, as opposed to like somebody saying, this is DNA. It, 95% proves that this had to be this person within a 1 in a 10 billion chance. It had to be this person, whatever. Like if somebody walks up and goes, doesn't this bruise look like this mouth did it? You're like, I guess so. Yeah. You're like, I mean, maybe. So if you look at, a blood stain on a wall, doesn't it look like somebody pulled a hammer back before they hit somebody else? You go, yeah, I guess it does.
That's probably what it would look like.
How would I know? Yeah. Which is like, I mean, it's a little iffy, right? So I just made myself laugh by reading this, which is a problem. In the widely used book Homicide Investigation, which was first published in 1941 and updated occasionally through at least the 1970s, it briefly mentioned that later bloodstain experts mentioned details that later bloodstain experts would expand upon, such that blood dries at a relatively predictable rate. Arterial blood is a brighter red color than other blood, which made me think of when I sent you that link and I was like, I looked up blood spatter and it sent me to gushing blood and it was like
blood squirt,
and you went, dear God, and I was like, that just reminded me of that.
I also made a very funny joke.
Did you?
Yeah, you said it's a thing and it said a blood squirt and I said my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
And I said, oh God. Yeah, it was quite good.
Gotta liven it up somehow.
It was quite good. Between 1880 and 1957, courts in Michigan, Mississippi, Ohio, and California rejected expert testimony for blood spatter analysis, generally holding that it added nothing to the juror's own evaluation of bloodstains submitted as evidence, which is what we were just talking about.
Random assortment of states.
Yeah, kind of strange, right? It's interesting to me that, like, Mississippi would be like, nah, whereas, like...
Nah.
And California strikes me as being one of the more like open-minded about like I don't know if I would call it like experimental, but being like, okay, we're more likely to believe you, but I mean, I suppose not. So this is only partially related, but I wanted to note that something similar is essentially what happened to Ted Bundy in the, like, especially with the Netflix special. He was basically caught on a bite mark. So one of his later victims, he bit and withdrew and then bit again. And he had very distinct, like, crooked upper teeth. And I think one of his canines was particularly curved. And they what they did one time, they went to his cell, they took him out of the cell, they took him to a dentist chair, they sat him down, and they said, you can either let us take impressions of your teeth or we'll take them. Like, we're going to get them.
Oh my God.
And he at first threw a fit and then finally relented and was like, okay, fine. So, and he was like, I'm not a violent man. Go ahead. It's fine with me, which, terrifying.
Yeah.
And they showed that in court. Then they basically now today, that wouldn't fly because that was like the one piece of physical evidence that they could really get on him, besides the fact that he was found with basically a kill kit in his car. But we're not going to talk about that because everybody went, oh, everybody's got a ski mask and a crowbar in their car this time of year.
I like to bind, to be bound.
And so
it's the second Always Sunny.
Always Sunny. Yeah, I was going to say, it's always sunny if people are curious. He's
suck shit.
He's not actually.
He says that one second.
He's not actually saying he wants to be bound. Please don't bind him. And they use that, and they basically call that junk science now. Oh. But they used that at the time to convince the the court. They were like, look, see, it lines up. It has to be him. And that was like one of the only things that would not fly nowadays. Like just that bite mark as basically your one strongest point of physical evidence. That wouldn't fly today.
So you're basically saying Ted Bundy would be innocent today.
I don't know that he'd be innocent because we have DNA now. All they could do then was like match that he had the same type of blood.
Oh, right.
But they didn't have DNA, so they couldn't.
Gotcha.
They could also. We're not going to talk about it, but none of the states talk to each other. He was in like 4 different states, but nobody ever talked to each other. So they would say like, "Who is this guy?" And up in Oregon, they're like, "Oh yeah, we know that guy. He killed a bunch of people here." And then they were like, "Wait, what?" But none of the police stations, none of the jurisdictions would talk to each other because they wanted it to be their own thing.
Right.
And because of their own pride, a bunch of people died. But we're not going to talk about that.
Thankfully, Kendrick Lamar invented DNA in 2018. So 2017.
I could see you waiting.
I was waiting.
You were just like, I'm so excited to do this. I'm so excited.
No,
it was good. I liked it. In the documentary, they call it junk science when they're talking about it. But I think that was a defense lawyer saying it, like, this is junk science, which of course a defense lawyer is going to say that.
No, I can call it junk science.
But it's not far off. Like, I mean, if that can be swayed, like if you can show that to somebody,
material.
If you could show that to somebody and go, doesn't it look like this? Like if you can convince that one person, maybe it does. That's questionable doubt, and you have to say not guilty because you have questionable doubt. In the Netflix documentary, The Staircase, there's a large point of contention that was the blood spatter analysis claimed that Michael Peterson had to have beaten his wife to death due to the blood spatter evidence. However, Dwayne Deaver, the analyst in question, had a 25-year career as blood spatter analysis, was fired from the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation in 2011 after an audit discovered he had falsified evidence in 34 different cases.
Jesus.
34 different cases he had falsified information. They show a video in the documentary. It's quite a good documentary where he basically has blood spatter and tries to recreate it rather than doing what he thinks happened and see if the blood spatter matches. So like he has an end goal,
right,
and tries to match it, gets close to it and goes, so here's how he must have done it. As opposed to, we think he did it he did it backwards. He did it the opposite of what a blood spatter analysis is supposed to do. And he ended up, like, they gave Michael Peterson an all new trial because this guy basically lied on the stand. And so he got an all new trial. And then he did it to someone else. He withheld information that would have been able to get someone out of jail, and that guy was in jail for like 9 years.
Jesus.
And
how can you do that and not like weigh on your conscience?
I have no idea, but he eventually got fired for falsifying evidence in 34 different cases.
That's
First of all, it's amazing to me you could get away with it 34 times.
Yeah.
But once you get away with it the first 5, you got to be thinking like, oh, the power I have now, because like if he thinks you're guilty, that's it. Because like if he can convince a jury, you're going to jail. Yeah. It's untelling, like, how many people actually were in jail still because of him. But so keep in mind, there's a ton of information out there about people being convicted on blood spatter analysis findings and then later exonerated. And there's probably people wrongfully convicted on blood spatter evidence who will never get out. Because we'll never know. We'll likely touch on some of those in the future. There's one, for instance, that is the basic idea for The Fugitive. Like that was based on kind of a true story. And that blood spatter analysis had a big play in that. For instance, they tried to say that he killed her like a left-handed swing, but he was right-handed. So that was part of the evidence they brought in. But I'm going to stick to telling you about the science of blood spatter analysis rather than the cases that it has affected, because there are many, but they're super interesting. So if you want to look into them, go for it.
Look forward to episode 52 where
we talk about all of that stuff. So BPA, or blood pattern analysts, use forensic photography to aid in providing evidence. Also, they just put forensic in front of stuff when they do it. It's like we need a dentist in here to tell us if these teeth belong to this dead guy. Yeah. Forensic dentist on his way. You know what I mean? Yeah. Hey, we need a photographer in here to take pictures of blood. Forensic photographer on my way. You know, like I get that it's a very specific type of thing, but just to throw forensic in front of it.
Those forensic flashlights so we can...
Yeah, it just made me laugh. Hey, can you hand me those forensic boots real quick? I don't know why, but it just got me. Words are important. Blood stain samples can be collected by BPA by cutting away stained surfaces and materials, photographing the stains, and drying and packaging stained objects. The tools for collecting bloodstain evidence usually include high quality cameras, still and video, sketching materials, cutting instruments, and evidence packaging. Imagine just like drawing it.
I was going to say, you have a photo. Why don't you sketch it?
Yeah, they're just drawing it. Sometimes they'll do that for the perspective, for like the angles of how something happened. The interesting thing about blood spatter analysis is it can also help you determine if what a person is saying is true. So it can prove things and disprove things. So like, I wasn't there, or like, she attacked me. Well, blood spatter can prove you wrong based on if you swung 15 times, then more than likely she wasn't attacking you if you were attacking her.
Right.
Blood spatter analysis gives us the following information. So it can tell us the type of weapon, the velocity of blood, the number of blows, the position and movement of the victim and assailant during and after the attack, which wounds were inflicted first, types of injuries, how long ago the crime took place, and whether death was immediate or delayed. So based on where the blood collects, how it dries, like where it was, you can learn a ton of stuff about. This is why forensics is so interesting to me, because everything feels like a puzzle. There's so many pieces to it, and all of these different specialties come together, and all these different techniques come together to put the puzzle together.
Gotcha.
I think that's why I get so upset if I read a case that's like stuff was falsified. It's like you work with the information you're given.
You gave me the wrong puzzle pieces.
And if you don't have it, then that's just how it goes. So blood travels in spherical drops because of surface tension, because blood is thicker than water. It's thick. It's THICC. The tendency of liquids to minimize surface area because their molecules are attracted to one another means it's cohesive. So it tends to stay together. It wants to clump up together. Also, its drops behave in predictable ways when they strike a surface or when a force acts on them. So because we know how blood reacts when it lands on things, it's similar to water. In this, if you've ever dropped like tomato sauce somewhere, like if
you've had a nosebleed before,
if you've ever had a nosebleed, like, there's different, like, blood drops in different ways, and because it has that weight to it, because it is heavier, it tends to like kind of spatter out. Like it has. They call them different things. So one of them was like a little satellite, like they called it a little satellite, and then they've got like little tails, and then they call them, there's some other word that I can't remember, but it's like when it perfectly hits the ground and it has that perfect little crown like around it, like that's got a name too. Like they've everything's got a name in forensics. They always have to name it. Now this is from How Stuff Works. Blood dries over time, and how quickly this happens depends on the surface on which the blood landed, how much blood the spatter contains, and the heat and humidity of the crime scene. But as a rule, the outer edges of the stain dry first. Have you ever put glue on your hand in like middle school or like elementary school and like let it dry? The outside's always dry first, and the inside is always the part. That's the first thing I thought of when it was talking about the outside's drying. That and like a face mask. If you
thought a can of wax, but
if you put a face mask on, like for some reason it's thinner on the edges, so it's going to dry like on the edges faster, and it's where it's on top of your face or on top of your palm or wherever, that's the warmer spot, so it's going to take longer to dry. And it never really, like, I've never made that connection of how blood would dry, because I guess I've never like had to see a copious amount of blood. I've never had a copious amount of blood like in front of me before, so I've never had to think about it. As far as you know.
That's true.
After the interior portion flakes off or is smeared by an object, a dry blood spatter can skeletonize, which means it'll leave behind a ring similar to like a glass on a table. So like a little ring on it'll leave behind a harder little section. It's similar in appearance, if not color, to a water ring on a coffee table.
Gotcha.
Clotting of blood begins within 3 to 15 minutes of like it hitting something. Like it'll start to clot, which is weird to think. Yeah, I know. You're making a face. It's weird to think of blood clotting. But actual times vary by amount, surface type, and environment. So mixed levels of clotting can indicate multiple blows or gunshots occurred over time. So if you have some spot of blood that's already started clotting and another one that hasn't yet, you can kind of tell like, oh, this happened first.
So that's how they time it. Okay.
Yeah, this happened first and second. When properly documented, bloodstain patterns found at the crime scene or on a particular person's clothing can be used to confirm or refute the position of a victim, witness, suspect, or defendant, determine if there is evidence of a struggle or if the assault is, quote, one-sided, or confirm or refute statements made by principals in the case. For instance, are stain patterns on a particular person's clothing consistent with accounts given by the victim, witness, or defendant? So, you know, if you have two people fighting, maybe they've just been stabbed or they've been hit with something. They're not dead. They're still alive, but they're still arguing about who started it, who did the first hit. You can tell that with blood spatter analysis. Normally, like based on where they were at the time and stuff like that, it's going to be easier on a dead body, but you can still do it in that instance because of whose blood is like coagulated sooner and stuff like that.
My favorite Family Guy character.
What? Coagulate. Get out of here. The simplest type of blood spatter analysis is determining spatters from transfers. So a transfer is if somebody like steps in a puddle of blood and then steps onto something else, or if somebody, if somebody's like put their hand in blood and then normally if like you see a blood, like a handprint of blood at a crime scene, that is a transfer because it was touching blood and it transferred it.
Somewhere else first.
Yeah. So it just transferred it over. Yeah. Spatters are produced when a force of like when some kind of force is applied to it. So it has to have come from something. Something has to have happened. The blood droplets, which are created by the force, travel through the air before landing on a target surface. And transfers occur when a blood source comes in direct contact with the target surface area. So it's different things. One of them has a force acted to it. The other one is a transfer from one area to another.
Gotcha.
And like I said, blood spatter means there's an external force of some kind. And the force must be great enough to overcome the surface tension of the blood, which I didn't think of, but it needs that energy to move it. Yeah, it needs that force to move it from one place to another. And blood doesn't break up unless it's acted on by a force. So blood
like Jell-O.
Yeah, because it's cohesive. It wants to stay together. It wants to hang out together, and it won't move until it's acted on by a force.
You gotta shake some Jell-O to get some Jell-O on the wall. You know what I mean? Why is that gross? You've been talking about blood for 15 minutes. I don't know. Just imagine that my blood was Jell-O and it was gross. Well, but that's a good metaphor because Jell-O has a high surface tension.
Squirting out of me as a Jell-O.
But in order
what flavor?
Lime, I guess.
I thought lime too.
It's like the movie one, right? Like that's movie Jell-O, I think. I always think of.
I've never had lime Jell-O.
Me neither.
That's where my brain goes. I don't know why.
I always think of Christmas Vacation.
Oh, okay.
Where she puts cat food in the Jell-O. She wrapped her damn cat.
Oh my God.
It's a great line. I love Christmas Vacation.
The greater the amount of force applied to the source of liquid blood, the smaller the resulting blood spatters. Dora's dying right now.
I took a sip of water when you did that voice, and I had to try so hard not to spit it out because it got me. God, I'm so loopy today.
That was I'm moving forward with or without
that's
you.
What that was, and it made me laugh.
Arterial spray refers to the spurt of blood released when a major artery is severed. This is the blood spurt. This is blood squirt we talked about earlier.
Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
Mm-hmm. The blood is propelled out of the breached blood vessel by the pumping of the heart and often forms an arcing pattern consisting of large individual stains with a new pattern created for each time the heart pumps. If you've ever seen a horror movie, you've seen this.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah,
this is like
somebody gets their throat slit, somebody gets stabbed, and it's always that over-exaggerated, like, splat, kind of stuff. That's what you always get in horror movies.
You sound like an alien.
Is that not how blood sounds?
You're doing a really good job of covering your experience with blood, by the way.
Expirated? Yeah, expirated. I was trying to think of like expiration, which
expired.
Expired. And when you exhale, it's what to do with your lungs. It's usually caused by blood from an internal injury mixing with air from the lungs being expelled through the nose, mouth, or an injury to the airway or lungs, and it tends to form a fine mist.
Oh, blood mist. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so like if you're like punched in the chest and like you get blood in your lungs and you like start coughing or like start wheezing, you're gonna, if you've ever seen people like spit blood out or like cough blood out, like it's going to be in a finer mist than if you had a nosebleed, for instance,
that
or get punched in the face.
In the shower one time.
No.
Well, it wasn't like a mist, but I had a nosebleed, but because I was like in the shower, I guess the water was like thinning it out.
Oh.
And I just saw red on the shower wall, and I was
terrifying.
Like, what is that? I don't know what that is. And then I like saw that I had a nosebleed. I was like, okay.
You were like, no big deal.
I was somehow like exhaling enough to give it like to the wall.
I like that you covered up that you were washing the blood off of you after you killed somebody by saying it was a nosebleed.
Yeah.
A nosebleed.
I have nosebleeds a lot. That's my only experience with blood, really.
Really?
Yeah.
Nosebleeds as a kid? Do you get them still?
Oh, no. This was like here. This was in this apartment.
Oh, you still, like, because allergies?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Small air bubbles in the drops of blood are typically found in this type of spatter, and they can leave a bubble ring of blood. So, like, just so like a bubble, when a soap bubble pops and it leaves that little ring, that's how people determine that somebody has been like, there's injury to the lungs or to the chest, is the blood will have the area where there's been like little bubbles. So you know that something has happened with, and then when, you know, of course, when the coroner gets, or not the coroner, but when the medical examiner gets in there and starts looking around, they're going to see that. But that gives them a good place to start, because they're like, we know that there was aerated blood essentially like laying on the ground.
Yeah.
One category of slow-moving blood called drips or drop stains occurs after, not during, an injury. And I didn't think of this because, like, when you see something in like a horror movie or something like that, and they have blood dripping off of them, they're usually running, or they're trying to get away or whatever. And that's a good point that it's not during the act of it, because there's motion during the act of it. There's that force behind it. And it has a relatively large footprint of 0.16 inches or 4 millimeters or more. So that's the drop, a nosebleed drop.
Right, straight down, no movement.
Straight down, no force to it. Falls at the speed or force of normal gravity, like no other acting outside forces on it. These drops usually fall from an open wound or from a surface that is saturated with blood. So if something's already soaked, it will just drip from that.
Yeah.
They form a spherical shape, which is normally perfect circular shapes immediately upon separating from the blood source. And the spherical shape left behind is caused by the surface tension of the blood, which I thought was interesting. So it's kind of like if you have like a little perfect like droplet, it's because of the surface tension that's left behind. The blood drop will settle into a spherical shape, and it maintains the shape until it impacts with the surface. So it would be a little drop forever, a perfect little circle forever, until it hits something and then it splatters.
So it wouldn't like stretch over the course of time?
No.
Interesting.
So it would stay like a little drop because it wants to stay together. It wants to be with itself.
Interesting.
Drip stains on a smooth surface make a more uniform circular shape, and drip stains on a coarse surface make an irregular shape with rough or jagged edges. So it also matters if it lands on tile versus lands on carpet. Carpet, it's going to spread out a little bit. Tile, it's going to kind of splatter a bit, but it's going to be able to, you're going to know which one it landed on first.
Right.
Opposite of a stationary object dripping blood is an object in motion, which produces what we know as a cast-off pattern. So this is what's most often used when you're looking at a crime scene, because it's normally if somebody has hit someone with a blunt object and pulled back, the motion of that pulling back has cast the blood off onto somewhere else, like above them or behind them. And then when they pull back for another hit, it's cast it that direction.
It's American Psycho getting the blood on his jacket in his face.
Yeah. So these, I have a little graphic here that I'm showing.
Lidi has brought visual aid.
I've got a little graphic I'm showing Dorm. So based on the angle of where it falls, so 90 degrees is always going to be like a perfect little dot.
Yeah.
10 degrees is a very stretched shape.
Yeah.
With what we call a tail on it. Yes.
You and the blood.
Yeah, me and my blood bros.
The blood gang, the bloodhound gang.
me and my blood gang.
Gang.
Part of the Bloods. No, don't hurt me.
No, don't say that.
Don't hurt me.
Well,
don't hurt me.
I'm gonna bleep that.
Analysts can tell the direction of the impacting object by the shape of the spatter, because the little tail shows the direction of motion. So, anytime you've like dropped some kind of liquid, it's left a trail behind it, and you see where it ends and where it would have started.
Right.
Just that like motion of, because the energy has to go somewhere. So the force of it, the energy keeps it pushing forward. Counting the arcs can also show the minimum number of blows delivered. So if you can like look on the ceiling and see there's been at least 15 times that this has gone back and forth, based on the how old like coagulated the blood is and how dry the blood is. See, like it's so much of like checking every single little thing. There's a
lot of little stuff.
In doing research, I came across photos that have been used in blood spatter analysis, and there was like one that was just a steering wheel, and it just had like 40 or 50 like little dots of blood, but it was from where someone was shot from behind, but it was just like 40 or 50 little dots of blood. It's like, you have to get all of those. Like, you have to know what happened in every instance of these dots. Like, you would have to know. And I feel like that part of that, if it's just you viewing it and saying, oh, this is what happened, I can see how that could be hard to hold up in court.
Sure, yeah.
Like, that's why normally when they're in court, it's like, is it your opinion, your expert opinion, or your medical opinion, whatever, that this, and this happened? Well, it is my expert opinion that this happened.
Yeah.
That's still an opinion, because you can't say definitively what happened unless you have video of it, or unless, somebody confesses to it. So I can kind of see it being a thing that people look at and go, no, I don't really believe that that's a possibility. Like, that totally makes sense to me. Gunshot spatter is different. So when a bullet strikes a target, some high-force impact spatter may be directed back towards the gun that fired the shot. So they call that a void. So if there is, like, say, somebody's backed you into a wall.
Okay.
And your back's to a wall. You shoot them because they're coming towards you. Their blood splashes back on you. When you move, part of the blood's on you, but part's on the wall.
Right.
That shape that's made from where you were against the wall is the void.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's that negative space of where you were is the void. And they say, okay, well, something or someone was here.
Right.
They can do that in like home invasions or stuff like that, where people have killed people and then taken things. So there was something that used to be sitting here. It's about the size and shape
lamp.
of, it's the size and shape of a speaker. And it turns out that this person just like pawned a speaker and they had this same type of gun.
There was blood on it.
Yeah, it doesn't definitively say anything, but it can give you like the extra step you need towards, being able to arrest this person or bring them in or like do more, forensic evidence with this person. And so this is known as back spatter or blowback when that happens. If the bullet exits its target, a larger amount of high-force impact spatter may be directed in the same direction as the bullet, and it's known as forward spatter because it just keeps going, and it only happens in the case of an exit wound. So if there's not an exit wound, it won't happen, but if there is an exit wound, it will continue on through, and that's just forward because it just keeps going forward.
Yeah.
Which I think is weird when you think about it, because when I imagine an exit wound, I'm thinking coming out behind you, but that's not necessarily the case. Like, exit wound could be somebody standing behind you and they shoot you in the back and it comes out the front. That's still... But in my mind, in my mind, I'm thinking of an exit wound being out here, but I don't know why.
Right.
But to analyze a blood stain pattern, an expert relies on three main interrelated elements: the size, shape, and distribution of blood stains. So if a number of stains radiate outward, analysts can draw lines back along these axes to an area of convergence, and that can help them figure out where this person was, where their assailant was, etc. This all gives them an area in only 2 dimensions, so investigators must determine how far above the floor or away from a vertical surface the area of origin lies. So that's where we get a little iffy. So we have to determine, okay, well, how tall is this person, and like how far away from the table were they, or how high were they holding their arms up when this happened? But we can do that with math. Not we, I can't. They can do it with math.
Yeah, math. A practical use.
Boo. In the actual spatter analysis, a forensic investigator determines the trajectory of the blood, where the blood came from, and how it spread to the surface. So by measuring the shape of the blood stain on a surface, the direction of movement can be determined. This can help distinguish, for example, between the rapid movement of blood that can be produced by a gunshot or the severing of an artery in opposition to the slower movement of blood from a minor cut. So thanks to a handy mathematical formula, analysts can use these measurements to calculate the impact angle. So it's the angle of impact equals arc sin, which is the stain width divided by the stain length. Or it's a stain width / stain length. So it's math.
Was there a sign in there?
It's just got a slash. Stain width / stain length. And it just says arc sin. This is this.
S-I-N? That's sign, right?
Sine. Arc sine. I don't do math.
Sine, cosine, and tangent.
This is why I can't be a blood spatter analysis, because I can't do this one. I can't do this one mathematical formula. I can't do it, so I'm not allowed to be one. They told me to stop calling. Increasingly, analysts are taking advantage of computer programs. I know where your brain went. That allow them to store spatter data, calculate values such as impact angle, and displays information in helpful 3D renderings. So even blood spatter analysis are using video games to help them figure out stuff.
But shout to Cinemax.
Wait, huh?
No, not Cinemax. What is the name of the? Sorry, what is the name of the program? No,
I'm gonna let you dangle here on Cinemax.
It's Cine something.
Is it?
Cinemark. That's it.
The blood spattered one is called like something splat or something. Nice. Like it's called something real
like
weird.
The Nickelodeon thing?
Like I looked at it, I was like, that's not real. It was so real. Funny. It was really funky. It was really weird. Like, listen, these people are all nerds.
Well, yeah.
Like these people working on this stuff.
They use math in their regular day life. Of course they're nerds.
They use math. What a nerd. BPA provides information not only about what happened, but just as importantly, what could not have happened. So we talked about that a little bit before. Somebody says, it was in self-defense. You can look at that and say, I think you stabbed him 25 times. And I don't think it was. So in conclusion, basically all you need to know is that BPA uses principles of biology, which is behavior of blood, physics, which is cohesion, capillary action and velocity, and mathematics, geometry, distance, and angle gross, to assist investigators in answering questions such as...
Appreciate your commitment to the goose.
Where did the blood come from? What caused the wounds? From what direction was the victim wounded? How were the victim or victims and perpetrator or perpetrators positioned? What movements were made after the bloodshed? How many potential perpetrators were present? And does the bloodstain evidence support or refute witness statements? Yeah. So blood spatter analysis can do a lot of things, but only to me in conjunction with some other form of forensics that has a scientific backing. Gotcha. Because I do think that at some point forensic, like blood spatter analysis has to be something that you go, well, I'm pretty sure it was this, right?
Yeah.
Because like if you're looking up at a ceiling where there's been 500 little splots of blood, like I really don't know that you as a singular person, even with the finest photography from your forensic photographer friend, could look at that and definitively say without beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is 1000% what happened.
Right.
Without some kind of like other like scientific technique or, piece of information backing you up.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
I assume this is most useful when there isn't a body, but if there were, is it more helpful in sort of the timing of things at that point as opposed to in like the positions of things?
Yeah. So it's helpful if the body's there too, because if the body's still laying there, like you can say, okay, well, where did she start? Right. Or where did he start? So if there's blood in another room and there's like cast off blood in there, but the person ended up in here, well, they must have ran. So now if they're running, it's not a self-defense thing anymore. Right. So it's kind of, it all depends on what kind of case you're looking at. So for instance, with the staircase, the husband said she fell down the steps, hit her head and died. Everyone else said, no, he cornered her on the stairs and beat her to death. Oh, and that's how she died. So blood spatter analysis, the guy who had 34 cases where he had, kind of screwed it up. Yeah. He came through and was like, oh no, he definitely did it because look, I recreated it in this video where I'm standing over this model and I'm hitting it. And then everybody else said, okay, well, you had 2 feet of room in the staircase. There's no way he could have done this there. Right. So then he had to go back and say, okay, well, he could have been standing at this angle. There's no way to know. Those are completely different things. Yeah. So the defense was saying, well, she slipped, like she hit her head, started bleeding, got confused, slipped in her own blood, fell and hit her head again. The prosecution was saying, okay, well, these are, she has blunt force trauma to the head. Could have been a fall, could have been beaten. They said that it was like the fireplace poker or whatever, but the fireplace poker was there. Like they tested it, didn't have anything on it. It was like this whole back and forth. As far as I know, I don't know for sure, so you can check me.
And spoilers for the staircase, I guess.
But I think he's still in prison.
Gotcha.
Like I think he's still in there. This was a huge case when it first came out because one of the theories that they don't touch on at all in the documentary is that they believe she could have been attacked by an owl. So they thought she was outside and she could have been attacked by an owl in the top of her head because her top of her head was like scraped up and came in and was like bleeding, tried to get up the stairs, slipped on her own blood, fell and hit her head. And then like, cause he found her, I think he came in and found her. And that somebody had said that there was some form of like feather that was in her hair. And someone else said, well, that the marks are, they're reminiscent of the fireplace poker, and someone else said, well, that could have been claws, like because
like talons and stuff.
Yeah, it could have been the talons of the owl. Like that one was never approached. And never approached the whole time. Right, that's the one I wanted to hear. Yeah. I was like, I want to know about the owl. Like was she attacked? But it was kind of laughed off. Like
then it would be a who done it.
In the episode. End it right now. It's not going to get any better. Oh, how many hits does it take? A 1, a 2, a 3. A 3.
God, we're old.
God, we're terrible people. Terrible people. But it's really interesting. If you get a chance, you should watch the Staircase document. I think it's still on Netflix.
But it doesn't talk about the owl, so be prepared to be disappointed.
But it doesn't talk about the owl. It's made me so mad because I was ready for that one. I was like, there's like a few episodes of it. You know how they do their like documentary things.
You know how they do.
You know how they do. You know how they do. You know how the true crime do. They broke it up into like 4 or 5 episodes or whatever. And the whole time I was like, when are they gonna bring in the owl? I think they very basically reference it. Like they throw it away at one point and they're like, there was also a thought that it was an owl, but we don't think it was or whatever. Someone who doesn't believe owls could kill people. I'm just here. I'm here to tell you about my anti-owl organization. And it's just called Ooh, and we hate them. It's Who backwards.
Ah.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Justice League.
The Justice League.
Liddy, where can people find you?
Twitch.tv/Team Liddy. Where can people find you?
Twitch.tv/DormStreams.
And we're also on Twitter and Instagram.
And
Patreon. And then we got a merch store.
TheLocalCoop.com.
And Snapchat. And YouTubes.
We do a really good job of selling these, by the way.
We have list them. Do you think anybody listens to the very end just to hear how bad we're going to screw it up this time?
No, I assume most people have already
checked out
turned
already,
it off when I laughed at Justice League. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was good though. That was funny.
Just got me.
Listen,
made no sense.
You have a really hard job in my episodes of still bringing brevity to the middle of me talking about how when your blood falls out of you, what it does. So like
it falls out.
when you're
walking around and your blood just decides to go.
When your blood just leaks out your pores.
Ew.
But you have a really hard job of still like maintaining an air of like happiness. So you do very well.
I made the same Jean-Claude Van Damme joke like 3 times. Don't give me too much credit.
How many jokes are you going to be able to make though? I did say he was O positive. I did try to make an O positive joke at one point about the Justice League Blood Boy.
About Blood Boy. I heard that one.
About Blood Boy.
I told you to quit it.
You did. And I just said it again just in case people missed it the first time around.
Drive that one home.
Anyway, until next time.
Be careful where you click.